Ningependa kumkaribisha Dr. Ahmed Yassin kama anaweza sasa anaweza kuzungumza. Karibu.
Asante sana, pole kwa shida mtandao. Sijui kama mnanisikia sasa.
Nakusikia sasa hivi Dr.
Samahani sana, ningeomba pia nizungumze kwa lugha ya Kiingereza kwa sababu mswada wangu nimeuandika kwa lugha ya Kiingereza, kisha kama kuna haja naweza kujibu maswali labda kwa Kiswahili au labda kwa ufupisho nizungumze kuhusu mswada wangu. Kama ni sawa, naweza kuanza.
Ni sawa. Karibu sana mzee wangu. Ni sawa kabisa. Tunatumia lugha zote.
Background. Kenya has experienced post-election violence both during the single-party era and also the multi-party era. Perhaps this was more pronounced in the 207 elections, where over 1,000 people lost their lives and many thousands more were internally displaced. This led to the mediation by former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan. 4 agenda frameworks were part of the mediation outcome that also saw the establishment of both long-term and short-term commissions and other independent institutions. A new constitutional dispensation was also agreed upon, and this led to the enactment of the 2010 Constitution. Kenya also remembers that as part of follow-up action, ICC came home knocking, and some of Kenya's leaders became guests of the International Criminal Court. It was at this point that Kenya was at its lowest point politically. However, the 2010 Constitution renewed the hope and aspirations of Kenyans, and the crown jewel of this achievement was the devolution of power and resources to the counties. So, I would now like to talk about national cohesion, and I will tell you why. I was privileged to be a member of the above commission, whose long title speaks for itself. However, armed with only the NCIC legislation and office space, equipment, and secondary staff, we embarked on 2 prolonged activities. 1, setting up structures and systems to aid our operations. 2, embark on the task ahead as provided for in the mentioned legislation, with the key objective of integrating and unifying, at the time, a divided Kenya. The social fabric had been severely damaged, and we put in place a number of programs to stitch this so that Kenya can go back to her feet again. Some of our major achievements include: 1, undertaking an ethnic audit for the civil service to determine the ethnic composition. The outcome was shocking, and what Justice Mutunga has just said, the big 5 not only dominate 70% of voters, but also all the jobs, the civil service jobs in Kenya. Number 2, we also institutionalized hate speech so as to deter and punish perpetrators of such messages. This was identified as the major cause of ethnic strife. Now, let me go to 2020 elections, and I'm making a pitch here for national cohesion. What is it that we can learn from Tanzania, because it's a two-way thing, and what is it that perhaps Tanzania can learn from our 22 elections? The 22 elections followed a hotly contested 27-1, and that had been nullified by the Supreme Court. Generally, the election passed out to be a peaceful one for predominantly all the 6 elective positions. All these elections took place on one day, 9th August 2022, However, the law requires that the tallying and verification of the presidential elections from the 290 constituency should take place at the National Tallying Center in Nairobi. The IEBC had 7 days from the day of elections to tally and verify the results before the declaration. So what did I observe, or what was observed in this election? One, over 22 million people were registered to vote, but only about 65 turned out to execute their democratic right. Compare this with an average in the last 4 elections of over 70%. Number two, noted that there was youth apathy during registration. Only about 40% registered, and perhaps a few of that came out voting. More women were elected as governors and in other positions. This time round, there were 7 women governors compared to 3 in 2017. There were 4 presidential candidates out of almost 60 who were cleared to contest with 2 major coalitions. Azimio la Umoja coalition and Kenya Kwanza. The third was Roots, and the last one, the fourth, was Agano Party. At the tail end of the tallying and verification period, 4 out of 7 commissioners, they are referred here, I don't know, by the media or politicians, handshake commissioners, because it is said that they were appointed because of the handshake between Raila and Uhuru Kenyatta. Some of them called them breakaway commissioners, took to the media to separately announce their dissent in the declaration by the chairman of the commission of the final results of the presidential elections. 6, the chairman of the IEBC went ahead to declare William Ruto as president-elect with 50.49% and Raila Odinga as runners-up with 48.8%. Minor fracas at the National Tallying Center for the presidential election was noted. There was also disappearance and eventually the death of 1 returning officer. So where are we now? Raila Odinga chose to contest the outcome of the presidential elections, and as we know, has filed a case in the Supreme Court. A total of 8 other petitions were also filed, whose decision will be made on the 5th of September 2022. My understanding of the case is for the Supreme Court of Kenya to determine, among other, 3 key issues. 1, qualitative, whether or not the winning candidate has been able to garner 50% plus 1 vote, and also attend 25% of votes cast in at least 24 counties. Number 2, qualitative. Since an election is not an event but a process, the court will have to determine whether or not it was transparent, verifiable, free, and fair. This is important since, and I think this is borrowed from Nigerian jurisprudence, the outcome of the process will inform the quantitative aspect of the elections. Number 3, role of the commission. Whether or not it is suffice for the chairman of the commission, who is the national returning officer of the presidential election, can declare results without the input of other 4 commissioners. The 4 commissioners took the position that they cannot take ownership of the verification and final tally as declared by the chairman of the commission. Number 4, role of the media. The mainstream media, to a large extent, performed extremely well in the reportage of the elections. However, one of the key presidential candidates, as confirmed by the Media Council of Kenya, raised an issue that there was biased reporting favoring one candidate of the presidential election, which was later corrected. It was also observed that the mainstream media were reporting in a conflict-sensitive way as a key stakeholder and opinion shaper. For the first time, the media also had access to the original results from the media, from the IEBC portal, and were able to download and tally the results as they were loaded. The most interesting was that they beamed different tallies, but these were incomplete as they were unable to get the final results. This would have required that they organize themselves so that they share the results at a central tallying center. Social media was awash with parody accounts, fake news, and misinformation, some of which were inciting up to the day of the declaration of the results. What was interesting, the polling stations, some of them closed at 5, and within a few minutes, the social media were announcing the results. That's not possible. So what is the possible outcome of the 2022? Then I'll come back to my pet subject of national cohesion. One, they can confirm that the 9th August presidential elections were credible, free, and fair. Number two, order rerun or runoff either because of irregularities or inability to meet the threshold, which I had alluded to. Number three, declare the runners-up or any other candidate as the president-elect. So issues for national cohesion, and I think this is very important. It's a two-way thing, I said. What I'm saying is that political contestation is informed by the following outcomes. One, voting patterns. Those who voted and their candidates were successful. It is often more difficult to manage success than loss. Hence, need to celebrate with decorum and not overdo it. B, those who voted and their candidates lost. Usually not a very desirable outcome, and in most cases, very painful. However, this needs to be seen in the context that if the elections were carried out peacefully, it nonetheless points to the fact that people were able to exercise their democratic rights, hence a win-win situation. In other words, both parties will identify with the majority winning candidate who now is expected to represent all the sides. C, those who did not turn out, they registered but did not turn out. This constituted about 36%, 35-36% in 2022. Have to be talked to find out why they did not do so that they can participate in future elections. This category should also include the youth, women, and other marginalized groups. Another issue for national cohesion is victory or mandate. We need to ask and interrogate the outcome of the contested elections, going by the cutoff point of 50% plus one vote and 25% of votes in 24 counties. What about the 49% who did not vote for the winning candidate? Do we forget about them? Number three, rotational presidents. Proposals have been made to identify with the Tanzanian model, which is territorial, island versus mainland, Tanzania, and also some aspects of Muslim Christian representation. In Kenya, and I think we know that, it's only 2 ethnic groups that have been elected as presidents since independence. So contrast that in Tanzania, what is happening. Number 4, is it possible to move away from the winner takes all politics into sharing of the spoils, or rather success, if you like, of the outcome? For example, in Rwanda, where the prime minister and speakers of the 2 houses are held by the opposition party. This, in my opinion, will ensure inclusion into the political structure in the case of Kenya, where half of the country may feel left out in the political power sharing arrangement. Number 5, how would we rekindle the interest of those who did not only register to vote, but also sensitize the big number of those who registered but did not cast their vote? Is it because of voter apathy or there are other issues? In conclusion, let me say that Kenya is always referred to as an anchor nation and the biggest economy in the region. In order for us to foster unity and expand as well as strengthen the democratic space, we need to ask some basic and fundamental questions. One, how do we make a nation? Is it through ethnic citizenship identification with a conglomeration of 45 ethnic groups and the domination of the big two and big five, or we can foster nationalism by expanding and strengthening democratic space? This, in my opinion, will require systematic and perhaps structural rethinking and fixing. Call it reengineering, call it political and institutional reforms. Number two, it is often said that democracy is an investment and not a cost. But in Kenya and indeed in Africa, we need to continue to interrogate what is the return to this investment. For example, the unit cost per voter is $16.9 in Kenya, and slightly lower in Uganda, $8.7, $5.16 in Tanzania, and a mere $1.16 in Rwanda. Do we need then to invest in trust deficit so that we can bring this cost down? The challenge for elected political leaders has and will remain in adhering to the values, promotion of unity and inclusion to reflect the face of Kenya. The equitable distribution of resources will also remain a major challenge in any democratic dispensation. And here I wanted to, again, borrowing from Tanzania, when they got independence, what they did, they worked on nationalism, patriotism, and all that. In Kenya, we chose economic development. Again, the most interesting aspects, let's look at the two major parties who are now in the Supreme Court. One is called Azimio la Umoja, talking about unity. While our brothers and sisters in Tanzania, they had achieved that way back in '63. Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya Alliance. The other one is Kenya Kwanza. So again, aspects of nationalism, patriotism. But where are we as Kenya? I think I will throw that question back for discussion. But the most interesting aspect is that, in my own sense, Kenyans, we do things using the banner of where I come from, my ethnic group. Just look at the presidential candidates and their deputies. Just look at what we are trying to do. If it continues, if the Supreme Court confirms the president-elect, your guess is as good as mine. It is like a steeplechase, we say in Kenya. One ethnic group gives it to the other. And we want to say that this election is ideological, is based on issues, is based on class, economic model. I think the jury is out there. Thank you very much.
Asante sana Dr. Ahmed Yassin kwa namna ulivyowasilisha mada yako kiufundi.